Hello everybody, this is Loki or WayOfLoci and welcome to No-Hit Podcast. Here it's my job to interview extraordinary gamers in the realms of challenge running, whether that be no-hit runs, completing games in their entirety without taking a single hit or point of damage, speedruns, completing games that would normally take hours in mere minutes, which has definite influence to this conversation today with a run that takes over 30 hours being completed in a much shorter time, as well as other such ventures. Today's guest is Cosmicborne, that's Cosmicborne on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Cosmic is an experienced no-hit and speedrunner, having completed many non-traditional no-hit runs, including Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a run taking just under 8 hours, including non-skippable cutscenes which we go into, as well as other such runs such as Skyrim, Resident Evil 8, and also some traditional From Software games including DS2 and Bloodborne. He's also attained world record level speedruns in Death Stranding, Ghostbusters, and Soma. In this conversation, we go through Cosmic's approach and the mentality aspect of doing such longer runs, his introduction to the no-hit and speedrunning scene, as well as a conversation about his boss ranking videos, one of which on The Witcher 3, which has attained over 1.3 million views, and many more topics. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Cosmicborne. Cosmicborne technically, I appreciate coming onto the podcast. Welcome, appreciate the time, and hope you're doing well, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So I would like to start. I read that you're a bit of a trophy hunter. So I want to start with, what was your favourite game to complete fully, or to trophy hunt, so to speak?
This is actually a tough one because there are two. I really love Death Stranding. It's my favorite game ever made, and it was the game that introduced me to trophy hunting in the first place, and one of the first games that I actually did, complete 100% basically. So after Death Stranding, I went back and did a few games that I remember really enjoying personally. So I think it's got to be a tie between either the newest God of War, the 2018 God of War, or Mad Max, I think.
Okay.
I did have a big glitch with Mad Max where I lost hours of progress, and that kind of put a downer on things, but still, it's a fantastic game. Definitely one of my favorites, for sure.
Definitely, I've gone close on God of War, but it was a really great one in 2018, and it's funny because I'm not a huge trophy hunter. I've done a few, so I've done like Hollow Knight and Celeste and one other, I think.
Yeah.
But I started, the first platinum that I actually wanted was Witcher 3, which is a game we'll go into in a little bit.
Ooh, yeah.
And I got all the way. It was a really enjoyable one. Like, all the trophies was like either story based, or the quests were really fun to do and all that.
Yeah.
And then I got to this crossbow trophy, and I was
I think I know the exact one that you're talking about as well.
If people don't know, like, in Witcher, first of all, there's iffy combat stuff anyway, but the crossbow is like one of the worst weapons in the game. And for this particular trophy, which is the last one that I still haven't got because I gave up out of frustration, I think you have to get like 50 headshots and 50 killing headshots in order to get this trophy. And it can't be aimed properly. It does no damage. It drove me around the bends trying to get that.
It's really not something that you use for damage.
Yeah.
The only time I remember really using it was to get, flying enemies, to bring them to the floor. But yeah, no, I would never have done Witcher, honestly.
And it was only like last minute that I found out about the Cyclops in the DLC, the Blood and Wine DLC, that you can finish in one shot because of it. So it has one good use, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go on to Hitless or speedrunning. Which was the one you first interacted with first? I just said first 3 times. And what was that interaction, or made you aware of it?
So it's kind of poetic, actually. The game that introduced me to speedrunning in the first place was Resident Evil 7.
Oh, okay.
And I say that's poetic because at this time, Resident Evil 7 was the last no damage run that I did as well. So kind of full circle. Yeah, so Resident Evil 7, back when it first came out, was the first single player game that I kept replaying because I just enjoyed it so much. I played it over and over and doing just mini challenges, like even hardest difficulty, for example. So naturally, as I kept replaying it, I was finishing it faster and faster, And then I was kind of like, I wonder how fast I could actually make this. So that's when I discovered my friends sent me speedrun.com. That was the first time I'd ever seen speedrun.com, and some of the times on there blew mine out of the water, right? Because they had strats already. They were going at it hard. So yeah, Resident Evil 7, definitely. I never did anything serious with Resident Evil 7 until fairly recently. And I didn't speedrun immediately after having that exposure to it. So my first speed game was a horror game by the people who made Amnesia. It's called Soma. And that was the first game where I really grinded for world record times with strats and everything. And I did it. I got world record in about 2 months. So it was such a fun experience because it was so new to me still at that point, and having all these strats and having a run to compare against that I knew I could beat if I tried hard enough. That was also motivation to do it as well. Yeah. And so from Soma, I just kind of branched into a few other games that I really felt like running. That's the thing with me personally, is I'm quite picky. So it has to be a game that I really, really, really love. I think that's the way with most people. But for me, I loved Soma. I loved Lasersphere 2, which is another game that I did. Eventually Resident Evil 7 as well. And that still applies to this day. When I speedrun games, it's still games that I have a very deep connection with. So yeah, it's all started back in 2017, I think, was Resident Evil 7. So not
what
too
was it
recent.
about? Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right, go on.
What was it about Soma that made it the one to go for the world record time?
Without getting too deep into this, Soma has quite a special place in my heart. It is the first game that I played where after I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So that was a tough time, obviously, fresh diagnosis and everything. It was pretty rough. So when I got home, I decided I'm going to play this game, because I actually watched, back in the day when I used to watch Markiplier on YouTube, I watched him play a lot of it, and I was like, do you know what? The story of this game is great. So I got home for the first day after being in the hospital, and I sat down and I played Soma, and I was so compelled by that game in particular. And the gameplay is nothing fancy. It's not a groundbreaking game by any means, but for me personally, I have that connection to it, and I knew the game very well as well. So I knew jumping into it, I was like, I know this game well, so any strats that they have, I would be able to do confidently. And yeah, so that's why I picked it. It was the perfect game for me to do at that point. So yeah, definitely, it was a pretty easy decision for me, I think, at that point.
It's weird because the internet's like still relatively new, but like in terms of like YouTube, I do remember that horror age in YouTube gaming. Like everything was like horror, wasn't it? And like,
oh yeah.
A weird sense of nostalgia right there, which is
definitely.
Like
Yeah.
So I would like to go to a bit of Death Stranding, but I shall leave that for just a quick sec. To go into Hitless. So from Speed, was it your interaction with speedrunning community that went into Hitless, or was it something else that caught your attention that made you involved or find out about Hitless?
Yeah, this is pretty funny as well. So my exposure to Hitless was actually completely separate from speedrunning, entirely. I actually found, and everyone who knows Hitless knows who the Happy Hob is.
Yep.
So I found Hob actually through the recommended channels on Twitch, of all places.
Wait, they work? They do?
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, I found Hob through that, and he was currently doing Demon Souls, and I had only pretty recently introduced to Souls, a few months in, and Demon Souls was the one that I hadn't played. So I was watching this new game, this new streamer, this new concept, and everything just about that one stream right there that just clicked with me. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like I wasn't even doing Deathless at that point when I found Hob, so seeing him do Hitless was just mind blowing to me. But it wasn't until a long time after I found Hob that I decided to actually do a run myself, and I decided to do Dark Souls 2, which was my first one, my favorite From Software game other than Sekiro. So I chose to do Dark Souls 2, and it was, again, I would not have done this if not for Hob, because at that point Hob was still the only person that I watched who did Hitless. That's changed now, but I still, at that point as well, the concept was still fresh. Not to say that it isn't fresh now, but for me personally, right, it was still kind of new. It was a few months after I started watching him, and I wanted something new to do in Dark Souls 2. So I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna boot up a Hitless run and see how I do. And yeah, it kind of just started from there. Pretty standard story. I think a lot of people were motivated by Hob, similarly to me as well.
Yeah, for definite, the definitely the OG of the Hitless started it all, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Him like Squilla for ours, or
For sure.
there's a fancy word for it, like progenitors or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So was there a trigger to like start your own run, or was it just like one day just to click, just like, you know what, I fancy DS2, why not, let's try this?
I'm not too sure. The thing is with my decision there was I was currently doing challenge run. I call them Lobos runs. Lobos is another streamer that I have a feeling people are also familiar with. Yeah. So he does a bunch of challenges where, for example, he'll go through the whole game with, I don't know, using a broken straight sword only as his weapon. But if he got hit or if he died, you just kept going and you could finish the game with that as a challenge, right? So that's what I was doing at that point. And I currently I had none other to do in my immediate list. So I decided, my next challenge would be a Hitless, because I'd done Deathless a few times in Dark Souls 2 at that point. I was a lot more experienced in Dark Souls 2 than the others. So that another thing, that's why it motivated me to do that. But yeah, no, I don't think there was any particular immediate click. It was kind of just, I want a new challenge that looks like something very challenging. I'll jump into it and see how I do.
And how was approaching that as your first run? How was like the learning curve, the like approaching it as a hitless game as opposed to one of these other challenges?
I think it was easier. Honestly, it was easier for Dark Souls 2 than some of the others, because I was so familiar with the game at that point, and I knew the mechanics, how it worked, adaptability, iframes, boss patterns, everything like that. Yeah. So I knew everything about that already, and I used one of Hobbs' runs as my tutorial, basically. I just kind of copied what he did, and I just translated it into my own run. I spliced a few things. Not spliced, that's the wrong word. Tweaked a few things. Yeah. I just exposed myself. I tweaked a few things here and there, but for the most part, like, my first run for Dark Souls 2 was pretty much Hobbs' route with a couple of help from a few other people as well. Yeah, it was great. Honestly, it was still fresh to me, as I said, so it felt like I was playing a different game at that point. Like, when you play Dark Souls casually,
Yeah. It's so much more like a focused approach to trying to complete a game as opposed to like a playthrough, if you know what I mean.
absolutely, yeah. Like, some of these areas where I was just running through enemies, it wasn't viable, like, if I was doing my broken straight sword run, for example, I would run through No Man's Wharf and get hit by a dog and think nothing of it, but you can't do that on Hitless. Like, you just can't. So it was a whole different experience for me.
Just to go on to some of the other challenge runs that you've done, I did have a gander. So you've done like item randomizer, deathless in like Demon Souls, and a ladle only run in Dark Souls 2 or bosses, which sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
that's sounds about as bad as, it is about as bad as it sounds.
Do you have any particular favorites or non-favorites that have interesting aspects to it?
Favorites. The item randomizer for Demon Souls was definitely one of the more fun ones because so few people have done it. Demon Souls has been console exclusive since 2009. You can't, it's not easy to mod, if like nigh impossible to mod on console, especially PlayStation 3 with how secure that thing is. So definitely when I could get my hands on the emulator and do that run specifically, it was such because Demon Souls is my second favorite in Souls. So, being able to finally do something as I don't know if you would call it unique, but it was unique to Demon Souls at that point. Like, item randomizers aren't unique by any means, but for Demon Souls, it was something. I think I only know one person who had done it at that point. So definitely, yeah, that was probably one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites would be, I don't think I have this one archived, but it was a Foggate randomizer in Dark Souls 3.
Ooh,
That was
sounds
just,
interesting.
yeah, that one was, that was something else,
So
definitely.
I'm imagining this is a bit like Mario Pipe Randomizer, that it just brings you out to a completely new place.
Yeah, like you could enter Udex Gundir's boss fight and be brought to Pontiff Sullivan. So yeah, that was very fun, definitely.
Has your enjoyment of or like love of Demon Souls carried over to the remake?
Yeah, definitely. I certainly haven't played the remake anywhere near as much as the original, but yeah, I every playthrough I do of the remake, I'm still even now like taking everything in. It's absolutely gorgeous. Blue Point really knocked it out of the park with that one, and it is a very just absolutely fantastic experience. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, they're such a good developer. Like, I really appreciated the work they did on the Shadow of the Colossus remake as well.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
Amazing job. What then? So then you moved from DS2 to Bloodborne. Was that correct?
Yes, I did Bloodborne after Dark Souls 2, yeah.
And how come that was the next one?
I don't I'm going to be honest, I don't know because Bloodborne is not my favorite. It's I still love it to bits, but it definitely is not my favorite. It was just the I think it was because it was quite short, and I was kind of going through a Bloodborne phase at that point anyway. I was doing quite a lot of challenges. So I just thought, right, I'm going to put the other ones on hold. And since Bloodborne is fairly short, it's only 8 bosses, any percent, and there's only one that I would consider to be very difficult. So I was like, I'm gonna quickly do this run as my next one before I do the other challenges. And yeah, it was honestly pretty impulsive that I picked Bloodborne, but I'm happy that I did, and it's also a very, very good run. All of them are fantastic runs. If you're getting into Hitless, just do your favorite game because they're all incredible.
For definite.
Very good runs.
And then before we go into the variety aspect, or that's variety in relation to what is commonly seen as like traditional Hitless, would you say that's fair?
Yeah, yeah.
It would be Sekiro no damage, and then what was the one that went into that? Was that because like the new aspect? Because I think that it only came out like 2 years ago, 2 years ago now, isn't it?
Yeah. Sekiro Damageless, I actually only finished fairly recently. That was only a few months ago at this point. But Sekiro has become my favorite From Software game just because I don't think anyone can deny the combat is just nigh on perfect in that game at times. It's absolutely beautiful. But as opposed to doing no hit instead of damageless, Sekiro was one of those games where blocking is a key mechanic. It's how you play the game. You are supposed to block. I mean, you're supposed to deflect as well, of course, but with Dark Souls, for example, I never felt like blocking was absolutely necessary, because there was the rolling mechanic, there were iframes, certainly more so than in Sekiro. So yeah, I decided to do damageless, as I think most people have done with Sekiro, just because of, you know, the fact that you can block and you are still using a key mechanic. Because for me, if I did Hitless, I feel like I would not have as much fun not having the freedom to be able to block and blunder a few attacks. So yeah, that's why I picked damageless over hitless for that. And again, only recently have I decided to actually go back and finish that run, because I did do it back in the day when it first came out, but nowhere near to the seriousness or the extent that I did it a few months ago. Again, I was doing more like low boss challenges back when Sekiro first came out. So
It's also just reminded me of when I've seen your name in Hobbs chats. Is I know it's your name because I can't read it. Because Cosmic's name is colored white, so it like blends in with the chats. I'm just like, I know what that is because I can't read it. and it's just like the text. Sorry, that's just a random thing that I just remembered.
Yeah, a few people say that.
So going into variety, and Star Wars Fallen Order is a very long, good game, but what drew you to trying to do it damageless? And for a little bit of perspective for people, Cosmic has done this run, which the YouTube video is just under 8 hours, and that is with speed up of cutscenes, which I'll allow Cosmic to explain a little bit more, because it's super interesting.
Yeah, so Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order has completely unskippable cutscenes in every instance from start to finish, even on New Game Plus. So there is absolutely no developer intended way to speed up or skip cutscenes in that game. So for the sake of my sanity, I decided to, as far as I'm aware, I'm the first person to do this. I use a trainer to speed them up, basically. So I don't have to sit through, I don't know, I think there's like 2.5 hours of cutscenes or something in that game, or even longer, actually. The first planet of the game, as an example, is 18 minutes of cutscenes. So obviously, for such a long run, I'm not gonna want to sit there and sit through 18 minutes every time I die, every time I reset on such a difficult.
I don't blame, definitely.
Yeah,
not.
on such a difficult run as well. And I know Hob was also doing Fallen Order, again another inspiration for me to do that game, among others. But he was using save states to skip cutscenes and everything, and that's a good idea. And I was willing to do that as well. But for me personally, I like to have it on one save file, just in case like there's an enemy that I kill on one save that gives me a bit more XP that I don't kill on another, and then you get that weird inconsistency where, you know, XP is not the same between saves. So I decided to use the trainer for that one. Definitely, it helped me keep sane for that run. I'll tell you that.
Apart from the length, which I actually want to talk about quite a bit, because I've noticed you've done several very long runs, both in speedrunning and hitless, but I'll come on to that in a sec. But apart from the length of the run, what was the key difficulties within Fallen Order? Doing no damage, I should say.
The length definitely was one big contributor to it, but another thing was, and I hate saying this, but glitches. The game is quite glitchy. You don't really notice it on first playthroughs, because if you only play it once, but there are quite a few janky areas in that game for glitches. Like, Cal will try and grab a rope, but instead of grabbing the rope, he'll just fall into the abyss. And if you fall into the abyss, just like in Sekiro, you will lose a chunk of your health, and that is the run over. And I have lost several runs to that happening. Everyone who's done Fallen Order, which isn't many, I think there's six of us, I think, total. They have all lost runs to it, and it's definitely contributed to the difficulty, because there have been runs, obviously, where I have just died because the game told me to no fault of my own. But
Game's just decided to screw you, basically.
yeah, exactly. But other than that, it is just a difficult game. If you compare it to Dark Souls, I think some people would say it's easy, but I don't like to compare Souls likes to Dark Souls personally. Fallen Order is just a hard game. The precision that you need to deflect some of these attacks, some of the bosses, and to dodge the force pulls that, for example, the Ninth Sister can do. There's a lot more to that game than just like rolling. It's a very nice balance between Sekiro and Dark Souls for me. Rolling is extremely good. Deflecting is extremely good. You'll see, if you watch my run, you'll see that, or anyone's run of Fallen Order, we use both of them pretty balanced. Like, there's a lot of rolling, there's a lot of deflecting, and just basically all of that tied together with it being a very long run with difficult bosses as well. Taron Malicos, that's a hard fight, and he is 6.5 hours in. So, yeah. Think of it like doing Dark Souls 3 all bosses, or Dark Souls 2 all bosses is probably a better example, and you've left, Watcher and Defender until the end. Hard fight, long run. There's just a lot to Fallen Order that makes it difficult, and it's why I think it's received a lot less attention than.
Yeah, I think it is also a huge shame to do with the unskippable cutscenes, because
Of course.
It just sort of went immediately out of people's minds once that term was even said.
Yep.
It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen, as you say, only a few people have done it. What would be a difference between a no damage and no hit run of Fallen Order?
Essentially the same thing as Sekiro, with a few exceptions. So with Fallen Order, let's say you've got 3 stormtroopers in front of you, and you've got the double lightsaber. If you deflect at the right time, Cal will automatically deflect all of their bolts back at them. But if you mistime any of those, you will instead block it, and a block wouldn't deal damage to you, but it would count as a hit, similarly to Sekiro. And there are also a few instances in boss battles, mainly, where they have force pushes, so they'll push you back with a force attack, and they won't deal any direct damage to you. There's only one force attack that actually does deal damage, and I'll talk about that slightly in a second. But for example, Taron Malicos, as I brought up earlier, if you're close to him, he'll push you back, and that's very fast, almost impossible to dodge, but it does no damage, but I believe it does count as a hit. So that's an example. The only force attack that does deal damage is the Ninth Sister's pull, and unfortunately Thunder Scepter, who is another runner of Fallen Order, he had his first run invalidated because he didn't know that dealt damage. It does such little damage that you can't see it on your health bar if it's full, but it deals like 1 damage to you, so we do have to still avoid that in the no damage. So basically just the same as the differences between Sekiro, with a few other exceptions, like the pushes that I spoke of earlier. So
with those, because I can't say I'm an experienced Fallen Order player, but those force attacks seem very, very quick. Is there enough, there must obviously be enough time in most cases, but there must be a very minimal amount of time in order to avoid those attacks.
Yeah, they're very... So, it's actually pretty cool. Some of them are avoided in different ways. So there's a boss called Gorgara, which is a giant bat. I think anyone who's played Fallen Order will remember this boss. It's a huge giant bat. And this boss has a wing attack where it will flap its wings and it will stun you. That can't be dodged, but it can be avoided if you deal enough damage to it in a certain amount of time. So that's how we avoid that attack. For example, Ninth Sister, she has a pull, which does damage, as I said earlier, and a push. The push is very difficult to roll, but it can also be strafed, so it depends a lot on playstyle. But yeah, generally, they are very, very quick. The pull we avoid by staying close to her, and again, similarly to Golgara, we deal certain amount of damage in certain amount of time, and we avoid that attack completely. But yeah, they are very tight for sure, most of them.
Do you have an appeal to games that have limited runners, or like that are sort of new? Because I saw one of the other no hit or no damage runs that you've done is Resident Evil 8, which I believe only you and one other runner has completed.
There's a few of us. I think 3 to my knowledge. But I'm sure there's more. But yes, definitely, I do in speedrunning and in Hitless. I do enjoy games that have less runners. I don't really know why. They just kind of appeal to me. I don't know if it's because they have less runners or if it's just a coincidence that the games that I choose to run have less runners. I'm not sure. Yeah, for the likes of Resident Evil Village, I loved that game so much. I still do. Absolutely fantastic Resident Evil game. And I'm not sure why it doesn't have more runners. Like, same with Fallen Order. I guess for Fallen Order, it's the cutscenes and the length. But to me, that doesn't really deter me. So I'm not sure. But yeah, you're right. I do tend to run games that don't have that many runners in both Hitless and in speedruns as well.
Do you enjoy the aspect of strat creation then? Because obviously, being only a few runners, each of you must find the niches of these runs or these sections or bosses.
Actually, not really. I definitely don't get as much fun from finding strats as other people do, but I don't know. There is some satisfaction in if I do find one, right? That's like, wow, that's consistent. That's good. That works. I do like that. But for me to actually actively go and make them myself, I didn't really enjoy. The only game, I don't know, maybe that's a bit unfair because I enjoyed it in Fallen Order and I enjoyed it in Village as well. Village is like the only game where, as far as I know, like everything was me. Like I rooted that myself. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of strat finding. I will use a guide if there is one, but it's not. It doesn't deter me from running or learning or anything like that.
So you just mentioned how the length of a run doesn't deter you, which I think is a good tangent to go down, because I just wanted to go through a little bit of a list of runs that you've completed.
Sure,
which is Star Wars, which is over 7 hours, Skyrim, which is almost 3.5 hours, and Resi's, which are around 3 hours, as well as the speed runs of a DS2 all bosses, which is just under 3 hours, and Death Stranding hours. So my question is, do you go for the long runs intentionally, or?
Not for Hitless. Definitely not for Hitless. The length of I will pick the game for Hitless, and whatever length it is, that's the length that it is. Right? I don't mind. For speedrunning, I generally don't like performing glitches myself. I love glitches in speedrunning. Like, I love watching glitched runs. They're crazy, but to actually run them myself is, like, kind of, I'd rather not. So generally, by default, that means the categories that I'm running glitchless is going to probably be longer. And Dark Souls 2 all bosses, for example, that is just long because the game has 45,000 bosses.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is for me. And any percent, I don't know, I didn't like any percent when I ran it. So that's unfortunately just the way it is for that. But also for Dark Souls 2, right? Like I did do a glitched run. I did unpatched any percent, which I can't even remember my final time for that actually, but that was like 20 minutes, something like that. So that's very short. Generally, yeah, if there's a game that has like an all bosses or all collectibles category, I do tend to steer towards doing that. Again, maybe because they have less runners, generally. I really couldn't tell you, unfortunately.
Because my query then would be from a absolute monster of a game of enormous amounts of bosses, such as DS2, to Death Stranding, which
Death Stranding, yeah. If unless you live under a rock, you will probably know that a lot of people would consider Death Stranding to just be walking. And I'm not going to get into that, of course. I'm biased. I love Death Stranding. It's my favorite game ever made. But you don't think of it as you don't think of Death Stranding and you go like, wow, that will be a fun game to speedrun. And I don't either. Because I personally don't think that Death Stranding is a particularly good speedrun game. But as with some of the others, my pure love for the game is what drove me to do it. And that sounds like I was unwilling to do it. No,
Kojima's just like over your shoulder, just
yeah.
like...
Nah, but Death Stranding was... I didn't want to stop playing. It's not a game that you can just like replay like Dark Souls and pick a different weapon or whatever, or do a certain challenge. Although I have done that in Death Stranding as well, but I can't do it to the frequency that I do with the others. And the thing about the Death Stranding speedrun is my record only got taken fairly recently by Hess, but it's pretty much all gameplay. It's not like Fallen Order where you can't skip. You can skip everything in Death Stranding, even the half a second cutscenes between loading screens. Like, you can skip those. You can skip everything. There's one section in the middle where it's 3 minutes that you can't skip, which is a perfect opportunity to do what I need to do during the run, and it's 2.5 hours in. So, but yeah, unfortunately, the length of Death Stranding, like if I enjoyed a game that was a 40-minute speedrun, I'm sure I would do that 40-minute speedrun. It just so happens that Death Stranding is the longest game in existence, so it's also glitchless as well. So
yeah, just a little insight, or at least Death Stranding on an average playthrough, at least from a Google search, is about 35 to 40 hours, and normally a lot more.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to go on to a random one that I saw. Could you explain Ghostbusters?
Yeah, so that was a wing and a prayer. That was one attempt and one run. Gotta be honest, I was bored. And Ghostbusters I guess you could say a guilty pleasure of mine. I think that game has very good gameplay. I love Ghostbusters anyway. It's just a cool franchise. They're funny, wacky, I just enjoy it. And I've played the game since it came out on PS3. And it's one of those games that I come back and replay like once a year. I'm like, you know what? I feel like playing that again. So, yeah. And that's also over almost 3 hours. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. I really don't. It just... all the games that I choose to run just seem to be quite long.
Just to explain, Cosmic has, in a category in Ghostbusters, the world record speedrun, the Ghostbusters video game remastered, I believe, or...
Yeah, definitely. It's... yeah, I don't really know about that one. I wasn't expecting to get a record at all. Well, I was, because I was the only runner at that point, but I wasn't expecting it to stand for this long, and it's actually kind of unbelievable. This just proves a game that you play over and over and over. I am only 20 minutes behind the fastest time for that category for PC, and that's with no strats or anything like that. This sounds like I'm just bragging, and maybe I am, but like that just proves how far game knowledge can carry you into a speedrun. So if anyone is intimidated to learn a speedrun, but you know the game very well, that is just proof, that you don't need to know the strats to get an extremely fast time. So, not that 251 is extremely fast, but I'm trying to not brag.
I would staple it over all the business cards and all that.
Fair enough.
Just a quick point before I go into a different topic. I was interested how, as you mentioned, you started with Resi8. How come you chose to do Resi8 first, damageless wise, and then 7 afterwards?
Village. So yeah, Village, which is Resident Evil 8, for anyone who
Yep.
is unfamiliar, is it was at that point where I had done speedruns of it, and there's just something I really enjoy about like the first person Resident Evil, like the ammo management in first person. The gameplay was just great, and the length, it wasn't too long. Like, it wasn't Fallen Order in that sense. You could skip cutscenes, this, that, the other. I finished speedrunning, and I was actually quite reluctant to do Resident Evil Village because of how difficult it would have been. And yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, it was. I'm not sure why I chose to do 8 over 7 first. I honestly just didn't think 7 would be possible because of how cramped that game is compared to 8. Because 8 was very open, the bosses were huge, and with 7 you're in corridors, you're in a swamp, you're in a tiny area, and I didn't think that would be possible. But after I did Village, I looked back and I saw that someone had done it, and I was like, do you know what? I just did 8. I really enjoyed it. Let's do 7. Let's go back to where I started. And yeah, and decided
do the full
to
loop.
Exactly, yeah. Decided to do that Damageless as well. So yeah, I've done both of the first person Resident Evil games now. So that was pretty cool.
I want to go down towards boss rankings. So
Okay.
your first, so you've done several videos on boss rankings of different games, which the first one was Bloodborne, all of which I think is also the first video on your channel, which is very well edited, which is definitely could be the same of many videos I've made first. So what was the trigger to make that video? And also, what was your previous editing experience? Because, like I say, it is a very well edited video for you, for the first one on that channel, at least.
Yeah, so here's a little secret. That is not my first video. I unlisted probably 90% of my channel fairly recently, so that is not my first video. I've actually been doing YouTube since around 2015. So
Okay.
I wasn't, obviously, I don't consider myself a great editor, but over the years I've edited enough to know what I'm doing. So yeah, that's not the first video on my channel. Before anyone thinks I was just like born talented, no, that's not the case at all.
I was born with Premiere Pro at my fingertips.
Yeah, exactly. But I watched a YouTuber who I have been accused of copying, understandably, to be honest, called the Demodcracy. And when I first started playing Dark Souls, after I finished Dark Souls 1, I was like, right, let's see. I struggled the most on Manus. Let's see what other people struggle on. So I found his videos, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed them, and I was like, do you know what? I thought a bit differently from him, so I'm going to make my own and see what people think of that. And so I made the Bloodborne one first. Again, I don't know why I seem to pick Bloodborne first or second, but yeah, no, that's where it started, and they were a lot of work, but they were worth it, as heavily edited videos usually are. But it was very worth it. I'm glad that I decided to make that.
It's funny that you say about having a different opinion, like thinking, oh, this is the way I would do rankings, as many rankings get, I don't know what the right to, like, flamed potentially, but everyone wants to share their opinion kind of thing in the comments.
Yeah, I think you can see that most egregiously on my Witcher ranking. That video was far more successful than I ever could have imagined it would be.
So let me just give it a little bit of back to The Witcher 3 people. So Cosmic has done a all bosses rankings of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which includes 90 bosses. The video is just under an hour and 20 minutes and currently stands at around 1.4 million views. So I actually wanted to ask the process of even attempting something like this, just the scale of it.
Yeah, that was a big thing that I was worried about, especially for Witcher. For Dark Souls, it was easy. For all the others, it was easy because I wasn't dealing with an open world game with 90 bosses, of which I've also missed some. So there is actually more than 90. But for that video in particular, I'll just talk about the Witcher one for this in this case, because the thing I was most worried about was getting all the footage for it. That alone took me, I think, hang on, I have it written on my script. It was like 97 hours of gameplay or something to get all of the bosses and all of the footage, and I still ended up missing some and had to use some from other channels. But other than the footage, it's not quite as overwhelming as you would imagine, at least in the way that I did it. So I just had a Google document with my script on it, which I would read from, and I'd have a list of all the bosses on that. And what I like to do is I like to put a spreadsheet on there with bosses and tick them off as I've recorded the footage for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tick them off as I got the footage, and also have just a folder, standard stuff, just a folder where all my footage goes, and I would name it appropriately. And honestly, like, getting the footage was pretty overwhelming, especially at the beginning, but after that, the whole video kind of just fit together. It just felt like Dark Souls, but on a bigger scale, really, after all that was done. But yeah, it took a while. The footage was a long time to get. The scripts took a long time to write. Even just ranking the difficulty of 90 bosses was, because some of them were so similar in difficulty, it was like, where do I put this compared to... where do I put this pinwheel in front of this pinwheel? You know, it was tough, definitely. And that video, despite it having almost 1.4 million views, the like to dislike ratio is great, but it's not absolutely phenomenal. It's 15-1, which sounds great, but it's as you say, people are very into Witcher, and my gameplay wasn't how they wanted it to be, so they just disliked it because I was playing badly in the footage, and that's enough reason for people to be mean. So
it's difficult with a passionate community because it can go both ways.
Absolutely.
As well as some of the things that I never even used for my first or even second playthrough. I don't think used any of like the potions and stuff like that because I didn't even realize any of it. Because I read a few that were just like, oh, I didn't use this combination. I was like, oh, I didn't even know any of this.
Yep, that's one of the big things. A lot of people. It even got to the point where I made a comment about it myself. I pinned a comment on that video saying, hey, I'm sorry I didn't use potions, because so many people were commenting on it. If I get one more comment about Golden Aureole, I'm deleting the video, you know? So it's that kind of thing. I mean, for the most part, the response is positive on that video, because a lot of them they're like me. They see a video and they're entertained by it. You don't need to agree with something to be entertained by it, especially when it comes to a video game. Right, you know, like for me in Democracy, for example, like he was like, hey, Lawrence is harder than Orphan, and I was like, nope. But I didn't dislike the video because he had a different opinion. It's one of those things. I mean, the internet in general, if you have a different opinion, you will certainly know about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think they just like ignore the first 30 seconds where you go, this is my opinion on this, and they just go, you're saying this is fact.
Ignore that. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
One thing I actually wanted to ask, because I struggle with this quite a bit, is once you envisage or are aware of the scale of the video you're going to do, how do you like start trekking forward with it? Because even just small videos that I've thought of, like that I've got 4 hours of footage, never mind like just shy of 100, how do you have that in mind of what you're going to do and then proceed kind of thing?
I'm going to be brutally honest with you here. I usually just give up. There have been a lot of videos where I have got the footage for, spent hours and hours and hours writing the script, getting footage, even editing a lot of it, and I've decided to just leave it.
What was it about the Witcher 3 one that kept you going, even being the biggest
I
or
think it's
longest, should I say?
because I had all the footage and I just really, really enjoyed The Witcher 3. And also it was unique. No one had done. I think the best you can get was like top 10 hardest in
No one
Witcher
had
3.
dared reach these.
Yeah, no one had done every single boss, which on a slightly different note, a lot of people don't think that a lot of what I covered were bosses. So that's another thing. I covered like even just like this guy that you fight in a back alley that has a health bar.
Yeah.
And then they were like, does that really count as a boss? But yeah, it definitely, I think the biggest thing for me was that no one had done it and I really wanted to do it. I wanted to be the first to do that. So I pushed for that, and the footage I got quite fast. Like I spent a lot of hours getting it, but I think I was done in like a week and a half with all the footage. So by that point I was like, right, there's no return now. I've reached this point. The hardest point was writing the script for the first like 50 bosses that were the same, and there was a lot of reskins, and that was difficult. That was the hardest part to get through. But for me, in any project, I reach a wall, but if I can get past that wall, I will almost always finish it. But often I don't get past the wall. So for example, I actually have half of a platinum trophy guide for the new God of War. I don't think I'm ever going to finish that just because the passion's not there anymore for it. So
Yeah.
So I just
And just saving it for Ragnarok, of course.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna clickbait the hell out of it. Yeah, definitely.
What's introduced? So we've gone into Hob introducing the aspect of Hitless, and then into also speedrunning. Was it Hob also that made you want to try live streaming as well?
No. Although my numbers may not particularly represent it, I have been streaming almost as long as I've done YouTube.
Okay.
I won't go too much into some of my history, but before Dark Souls, I played Overwatch religiously, and before Overwatch, way back in the day, I played Ark Survival Evolved, and I was part of a YouTuber server for that, and one of the members of that server was streaming, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try that. And the first game I streamed was Skyrim, and it was an absolute blast. And then after like a month or so, I moved from YouTube to Twitch under a different name, and I've just basically streamed on Twitch ever since without any huge breaks.
What is it about live streaming that makes you have kept with it for so long or enjoyed about it?
Obviously, there is interacting with people. I've met some fantastic people on the site. Hob, just from Hob's community alone, I've met so many people who have joined my chat and who stick with me. I mean, I'm sat there playing a game and people are here talking with me. Like, no one deserves that, really. No one deserves, especially, people who get paid for it. You sat there, you're playing a video game and you feel so, it's just unbelievable. Doing what you love and someone is there to keep you company and watch you doing what you love. It's just wow. It's wow. It really is. That's the only word I could use to describe it. Even now, 5 years later, it's unbelievable. And again, I said earlier, like when I started, that my numbers don't represent it. I don't want that to sound like I'm ungrateful. I'm extremely grateful for everything that I have. I don't deserve a single viewer for what I do. So please don't take that the wrong way. I appreciate everything that people give me. It's crazy.
I also wanted to touch briefly on events that you participated in, because one that popped up was a McRaptor tournament from last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was certainly very impressive. It was a DS2 or Dark Souls 2 no-hit tournament, which, outside of the pressure of doing a no-hit run itself, you also managed to do so in a competitive environment, which I think is really impressive. And was just wondering how if you've done other events on top of that, or in that for that event in itself. Do you enjoy it? Is that something that you like going out and trying?
I have only been part of 2 events. That was the first one that I did. And after that, I participated in another GG League tournament for Mortal Shell. It was Deathless speedruns when that game was fairly new. And other than that, I have not participated in any others. It's kind of strange because the nerves that you get from doing it like in a competitive environment or to more viewers, it's always there before you start, for me at least. And then once you start running, you kind of forget a lot. So the nerves didn't really hit me until I was walking down to the Throne of One on 0 hits. And then, because I had no idea how other people were doing anything like that. I was still kind of angsty because my internet cut out halfway through that as well. So, but yeah, I'm very eager, wink wink, to participate in any other events, wink wink, that if people are planning any for games that I've done.
For your first event, you absolutely smashed it.
That was unbelievable. I still can't believe that happened. That was just, I don't know how I did that. That was my second ever Hitless, and I like barely practiced as well. Like I don't understand how I did that, but I'm not complaining. It was a great day, really great day, and it was an honor to be a part of, such a tournament as well, for a good cause as well. So
work best under pressure.
Honestly, I do. I think I do.
If one game could be released tomorrow, either an announced, unannounced, or a sequel to a game that you don't think will ever exist, what game would it be?
Honestly, screw Elden Ring. Give me God of War Ragnarok tomorrow.
Nice.
Give it to me right now. I've just upset some people, haven't I?
I can agree. I'm not sure. I've not actually, considering I've asked this question a few times now, I've not actually thought of it for myself, really. But Ragnarok is something I'm really looking forward to, and just can't wait till arrives. Gonna absolutely play through that.
I'm excited for Elden Ring. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure From Software is gonna absolutely bless us with a fantastic game for Elden Ring, but I don't have the same connection to Elden Ring that I feel like I have to God of War at this point. So, I just want to see Kratos. That's what I want.
Oh, it's funny actually, like random tangent, but did you watch the event on that trailer when they showed the trailer?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I thought it was very like, I don't know what the correct word is, but like there wasn't that big show of it. Like they sort of just played it. I was like, hang on, this is God of War, as opposed to like there was the big build up to God of War. I was like, oh wait, that's Kratos like sitting in a corner on a fire. I don't know. It was just
I
like
think, of course, I think most people know this, but they knew people were hyped for God of War, so they left it until right at the end of the presentation to show it off, and I don't think they had the time past that really to talk much more about it. I mean, this is just my guess, but I think they knew, to be honest with you, I think releasing a trailer like that was probably enough to get people excited. It certainly got me excited. I was borderline crying. So yeah, I'm excited to play that game, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that game will be challenge runnable. For Damageless, because I have considered doing 2018 God of War, but that's on another level.
I mean, it's a long run. It's definitely up your alley.
It's a long run, skippable cutscenes, but a lot of enemy spam. So
yeah, I can't remember what the place is called, but the one with all the flying enemies. That seems horrendous to me thinking about it.
Funnily enough, that was one of the more doable areas.
Is it? Where's like a tricky place?
When you get the spoilers, when you get the Blades of Chaos,
okay.
typically when they start spamming you with enemies because the blades can hit multiple enemies at once.
Right, okay.
So they kind of just throw 100 enemies at you at once, and then, you know, one enemy manages to get through and slices you, that's it.
Yeah.
And there's like 4.5 hours of that. So Helheim, for the second time when you're on the ship and you've got to keep the fires lit, that section is just awful. So
How could they not think of the damageless aspect
I know,
when they were making that?
Exactly. Yeah.
I've sent an email to Corey for the next one, so it should be fine.
Brilliant. Can't wait.
If I said hype moment on stream or excited or celebratory moment on stream, what would it be from your stream?
There are two key moments, or three, I suppose. When I got the no-hit on the GG League tournament for Dark Souls 2, that was unbelievable to me. I couldn't believe it. Second, I'm going full gush mode now, all right? So I got raided by Hob one night for 1,200 viewers. That was also unbelievable. I couldn't see what was happening until I realized that I had follower only on and no one could talk for 5 minutes. So that was great. But honestly, above all, I think the best I've ever felt was walking down that final corridor in Jedi Fallen Order, because I had tried that run for 8 months. I've never worked harder for something in my life, quite frankly, other than school and college. You know, getting that Fallen Order run after 8 months of pain and losing runs 5, 6, 7 hours in, it was just, I mean, I started crying before I'd even finished the game. Yeah, that moment for me was just, I still can't believe it to this day. I still watch snippets of that run like, I did this, you know? And I very rarely do that. I'm a very self-deprecating person. I don't like to brag. I don't like to say like, oh, I'm great at this. I'm great at this game. I'm very much the opposite. But when I see, you know, Fallen Order, I'm extremely proud of that, and very glad I worked so hard for such a fun run, because it was the hardest, but it was also the most fun run that I've done, I think.
I think it's a big habit of like us Brits of the self-deprecation is right up there in our skill settings.
Yeah, we're all very skilled at it. Yep. Very good.
If you can tell me about a time when a run was taking its toll, as there's quite a big mental or stress aspect of challenge runs, particularly like Hitless and Speedrun, that a lot of runners go through. If you could tell me a time when you was going through that and then how you managed to get past it to get the run, whether that a speed run, Hitless run, or other such.
For Death Stranding, I'll bring up Death Stranding and Fallen Order for this, because those are definitely two runs that really took a toll, and Village as well a little bit. But for Death Stranding, this is going to sound quite abrupt, but I just quit running, because it was reaching the point where I wasn't really enjoying that speedrun anymore, and it was starting to deter from my enjoyment of the game itself. And I don't want that to happen to my favorite game ever made. I don't, you know, like, that's not worth it just for speedruns. I have no intention currently of taking back the world record, for example. I don't care about world record anywhere near enough to want to try the run again, because I don't want my enjoyment to be spoiled for the game. I still love it to bits, and I don't want to ruin that. So for Death Stranding, I just stopped. I stopped speedrunning it. Fallen Order. Now this, I don't know how much this can apply to runs that aren't quite as long, but Fallen Order, I got really fatigued at some point. Really, really fatigued, like 7 months in. I just couldn't reset anymore. Every reset, I was just like, no, please. It was terrible. Terrible time. So my big change of mindset for that was to do 1 attempt a night, maybe 2. That's it. No more than that. If I died on the first planet, that's it. It's over. Like, I'm not going to reset unless I really felt like it. That's why I said 1 or 2. And I got the run on the 3rd attempt of that mindset. And whether that was because of the mindset or whether I just got lucky, I'm not sure, but trust me, it felt amazing. And if you are doing hitless runs that are 3+ hours long, don't, even if you think you're fine, like, oh, it's easy, I can reset 50 times a day, don't do it. That's what I would say. Just do 1, 2, maybe 3 attempts per day. Make them really count. And trust me, that is far better for the mindset. Again, whether I got Fallen Order because of coincidence or because I changed my mindset, I'm not sure, but that's what I would recommend to anyone, definitely. I think that's less the case with speedruns because resetting is kind of what speedrunning's about, especially for some runs where resetting saves time. Like in Minecraft, for example, I know it saves time to reset constantly, so until you get a good seed, for example. But yeah, sorry, I've been talking a lot, but yeah, it's
fine.
Just take it slower than even you think you need to take it, and it'll be way better in the long run.
Yeah, I want to tag on to something you just said there about making sure runs count. I think this applies to shorter runs in any sense as well, because it can be very easy to get into a mindset of it's only a short run, so a reset's not really a big issue, but having a mindset of trying to make each run the run can make each run a lot better, either as a learning experience to make sure that the hits you get in are the trickier ones or the ones you need to practice more, as opposed to just quick or mistakes or lack of concentration just because it's an easy reset.
Yep. In the case of Fallen Order, if you enter a new area and there's 5 stormtroopers, instead of just being like, right, I'm going to deflect all of this and block whatever comes at me, woo, la da da, actually look where the stormtroopers are and think, right, those 3 can go first, and then those 2. As an example, really just the thing about Hitless that people forget about is that it's not about speed at all. It is not about speed. So if you do need to sit in a corner and spend 10 minutes scanning the room, do it because you haven't been hit. So, definitely, if you are sick of resetting, just make it so that you don't reset as much forehead. Basically, just press the win button.
Just don't get hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's made me curious. For a run like Death Stranding, that is just shy of 5 hours, just shy of 5 hours is like the top time. So, and there are other runs which are longer than that. What then is the point of reset, or what causes a reset for a speedrun like that?
See, that also depends a lot on the person. When I was running Death Stranding, I would reset if I was like, let's say, more than a minute behind. Because despite the fact that I know I could still PB and record off that, I also lost like 2.5 minutes up until that point. So part of me is like, you could probably just reset this and then be 2.5 minutes ahead at this point. That's one thing about longer speedruns is you do have more time to make mistakes and they can be more relaxed in that sense. It's a blessing and a curse to have a long run. But another thing as well, just touching on the subject we were just talking about, Death Stranding also crashed a lot.
Okay.
And it crashed like 6 hours into one of my runs. So that is soul crushing when that happens. But
just it's a common speed running rule, which I imagine applies to Death Stranding as well, where if a game crashes or you freeze or anything like that, it normally invalidates the run for people who might not be aware. I imagine it's the same with Death Stranding.
Actually, no, not for Death Stranding, because not all games have an in-game timer. So for Death Stranding, it is timed RTA, real-time attack, which means the loading isn't removed from the run. It is you start the timer, and it is from your real time, your clock, from beginning to end. There is no load remover because no one has cared to make one. I don't know how to make one. Death Stranding's not exactly active, so but for Death Stranding, it's you kind of just you let the timer run and you restarted the game and you loaded your save and you kept going. But at that point you lost so much time that it's usually just not worth it.
Makes sense.
But yeah, you're right though. For games that have in-game timers, often it does invalidate the run, because usually the in-game timer sticks to the game with an in-game value that it reads, and sometimes the game crashing can screw up that value, and then it's over. So
you've run like several games. So is there I don't know if advantage is the right word, but what's the differences between a speed run that's based on real time and based on in-game time?
Usually that's also kind of a blessing and a curse. Right now, for Resident Evil Village, there are strats where if you pause the game, your timer will also pause. Okay. So
in-game timer, that.
Yeah, the in-game timer. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So
that's obviously obvious. Sorry.
yeah. If the live split timer will pause. So if you're going down an elevator, you can pause buffer the game to make it load faster, and strats like that I'm not a huge fan of. There are ways that you can exploit the in-game timer sometimes for speedruns like that. It's quite rare, but there are cases like that. But almost all the games that I've ran, I think, as far as I'm aware, Layers of Fear 2 and Death Stranding are the only games that do run from the real timer. But yeah, honestly, you don't really notice it all that much. I like to have a load remover just because that is how fast I completed the game on that save file.
Yeah.
But for me, it's nothing too important. Again, for Death Stranding, there's probably 20 loading screens, which sounds like a lot, but that is nothing in a 5-hour speedrun. So it would barely make a difference. And honestly, for the current level the game is at right now, if we added a load remover and having crashes invalidate the run would just make the run even less fun for people. So yeah, you don't really notice it most of the time.
Would you say the dislike of pause buffering or those sort of exploits is to do with the enjoyment of running or of a particular run?
Yeah, I think if I went back and I ran Resident Evil Village right now, I wouldn't use strats like that. I would lose time on purpose just to keep myself enjoying the run more. It's another reason why I haven't submitted a lot of my speedruns to speedrun.com, because I don't like that competitive aspect of it, and it deters from my enjoyment. So I have really focused recently on just purely enjoying what I'm doing, and if there is something in the run that makes me enjoy it less, I'm just not going to do it. It's as simple as that. And I think it's also because I don't like performing glitches that much, and some things to me feel like glitches, even if they are or if they are or are not glitches. We're not going to discuss that because that's been discussed 40,000 million times on the internet. But
what are in the future plans of Cosmicborne?
Right now, I'm running Resident Evil 3 Inferno, no damage. Inferno is the 6th on hardest difficulty. So that's pretty exciting. I started work recently, which means I have a lot less time to do these runs. But yeah, I'm gonna keep doing no damage. I'm gonna do the new Prey as well, if anyone is familiar with that game. Plan on doing that no damage as well. I've already routed part of that, and some whatever speedruns I feel like, whatever trophy hunting I feel like. Yeah, pretty much. But right now, Resident Evil 3. That's the plan.
And if people wanted to have a gander or check you out,
they can go to twitch.tv/Cosmicborne, and I am live when I can be. Unfortunately, I don't really have a schedule at the moment due to work, but one of those will be sorted out soon. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
And I also recommend his YouTube channel, which is under the same name.
Yep.
So, Cosmic, I really appreciate the time, dude. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have as well, dude.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. I hope everyone else has enjoyed as well, and I shall catch you in the next episode.
See ya.
If you want to hear more conversations with extraordinary gamers, be sure to head over to youtube.com/WayOfLoci, Loki spelt with a C, or wayofloki.com/NoHitPodcast.